Back to Africa now, in a country struggling to heal. 13 years ago, Rwanda was the scene of a genocide. Nearly 1 million people were killed, most of them minority Tutsis, slain by members of the Hutu majority. When the CBC's Claude traveled there 9 years ago, punishment was on the mind of many victims. But now forgiveness is the goal. So Claude returned to see if reconciliation is working.
In her neighborhood, Eugenia is known simply as the woman with a crooked walk. A widow, she carries her genocide story with her in every painful step. Machete wounds to her neck, her right arm, her feet. After 13 years, there is little healing and no forgetting. Eugenia's story doesn't fit with the popular image of post-genocidal Rwanda, a country where many victims have made peace with the killers. 9 years ago, Eugenia told us her story in graphic detail, how her husband and all but one of her children were massacred in this compound.
My eldest son stood up and said, "I'm sorry, please forgive me. I will not be a Tutsi anymore." But Rwanda cut his throat, like this, and threw his body over my lap. I was holding another child on this side, and another baby here, like this, and he cut my arm so that it dropped. And then he brought down his sword on my baby's head. And then he took the other child and killed him with his sword.
The killer was a Hutu named Francois Uwimana. Eugenia sat in the court as Uwimana was sentenced to life in prison. It was little consolation then. It's not much consolation today. Thousands of the killers who packed the jails in 1998 have since apologized for their crimes. They've been freed and returned home to lead normal lives. But Eugenia has heard nothing from Uwimana. Meanwhile, the mud house she was given as a survivor is crumbling around her. She's trying to feed her one remaining daughter and 2 children from a brother who was also massacred. She earns $30 a month working as an orderly and a janitor at a local health clinic, barely enough to feed and clothe the family. Doesn't the government help? I ask her. No, they don't even know who we are, she says. Rwanda's problem is poverty. It simply doesn't have the resources to do much for the survivors in the way of material aid or even simple justice. What it has done instead is encourage a uniquely African solution to ease social tension. Once a week in every community across Rwanda, the streets empty, the houses are evacuated, and citizens gather at an outdoor tribunal called a gacaca. The gacaca is the government's main way of fostering reconciliation. At a gacaca, citizens are given a voice. They tell stories, bring accusations, even pass sentence. And it's at such a gathering that we found Pelagia Mukakamanza recently. 9 years ago, Pelagia was a frightened survivor. She led us to a common grave where 40 members of her husband's family were buried. At the time, she was struggling with the idea of forgiveness.
For us, we would like to live in peace with our neighbors because the Word of God tells us to live with everybody. So we must bear it. But it's difficult.
One of Pelagia's nightmares was this man, serial killer Eric Kazamarande, a Hutu who terrorized the village of Kabakuba with his machete. In a 1998 prison interview, Eric explained his actions this way.
As someone who believes in God, I think we were driven to kill by an invisible enemy who invaded our souls.
Today, Pelagia and Eric call themselves friends, neighbors, even brother and sister. It seems like a textbook case of reconciliation. But when she and Eric are interviewed together, Pelagia's voice and body language are ambiguous. There is clearly no warmth in the relationship. As for Eric, he confessed and said he was sorry, but to this day, he still blames outside forces for driving him to murder. Psychologist Emile Rudasingwa has met hundreds of genocide survivors and killers. He says both groups are in a state of shock and both need time to recover.
C'est vraiment question de temps et question de laisser les gens eux-mêmes initier ça. Donc, que l'initiative soit une initiative individuelle ou d'un groupe micro, pas un groupe au niveau macro-national.
For victims like Eugenia, the physical and emotional scars are still fresh after 13 years. For them, the genocide is a shadow that won't go away. Asking them to forgive now may simply be too much. Claude Adams, CBC News, Nyamata, Rwanda.